Hello, Lisa.
Hi. Hi, Ange.
It's so good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks for taking a moment to share a little bit about your experience with the Edison Effect. For those, who are not in the program and are considering the program, people like you who are sharing their experience, it's really a beautiful community service because I'm sure there was a time before you participated in which you had all the same questions, concerns, worries, and fears that they have. So I really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's good to be able to share, it's coming from a good place. So yeah, I'm happy to be here, and if I can help other people on that journey, from pretty difficult places, then yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. That's very much in the spirit, I think, too, of the Edison effect, which is like that we take care of each other. So I'm glad that you're here and I'm glad you're going to share. Uh, so maybe you could start a little bit with just briefly, like a little backstory of what your journey was like before you found my program, like how long were you sick and when did the journey with MECFS start? Just maybe a little bit about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, so it started with COVID. So I had COVID in 2020 when COVID first started spreading around. And obviously that was before anyone really knew that it could turn into long COVID.
Yeah.
Um, I had it again in 2022, and in 2020 I got some of the symptoms, but it was things like asthma and MCAS. Didn't know what MCAS was then.
Fine,
So
sure.
this whole thing's always just like this unfolding journey of like understanding. It feels like you get through one layer and there's another. But 2022 I had it again, only this time I was hit with fatigue. And did as a teenager have Epstein-Barr virus, and even I had a really bad flu in 2016, which left me pretty whacked for like 3 months. So I don't know if there's a sort of predisposition there, um,
I think there is.
but yeah, it left me really fatigued and with a bunch of new symptoms, including PEM, which again I didn't have those words for it at the time.
Right.
Just trips to the doctors who I was lucky to have, a nice doctor who was supportive and, um, but like a lot of doctors just didn't really know
What
how to help, like there isn't really anything we can do apart from tell you to rest. As a single parent with a full-time job lecturing at university and an outdoor department, a very physical job, it was pretty hard to rest.
sure.
And so by the end of 2022, I kind of had what I would now call like a crash or a flare or a wobble.
A wobble,
And
as we call it in the Edison effect. A wobble. Yes. But for those watching who don't know that language, a crash is what you're referring to.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I had about 2 months off work. Still didn't really understand what was going on, just kind of fought to get back to work and carried on pushing through. Um, Towards the end of last year, or sort of the end of the summer, I was the sort of flu-like pain, the malaise was getting really bad. Still pushing through as much as I could, but kind of spending all weekends crashed out and evenings and so on. And I got into the autumn semester and something just tipped over and I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't do basic, it hurt to get dressed, it hurt to have a shower. I was just that complete sort of no energy whatsoever,
Yeah.
malaise, pain, flu-like pain everywhere. And brain fog, like just horrendous brain fog. Where you think, have I got Alzheimer's? Like
Parkinson's,
what
MS.
yeah, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
So I guess I'd gone on this sort of quite long 5 to 6 year degeneration journey and then just tipped over and crashed. And that lasted, well, I mean, it's still sort of ongoing, but that was for 4 months of barely get out of bed. How do I go shopping? How do I do these things? So basic daily chores. So I went from mild to moderate, I guess.
Yeah, in the span of what sounds like about 2 years. From
Yeah.
2020 to 2022 is what you're referencing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, so it was from 2022 to end of 2022. I had a bit of a crash, and then I got better, well, better. I managed,
Yeah,
um,
to come back to
and
some
then it
kind of
was
baseline.
yeah, and then it was last autumn, so the end of 2025, that I had another big crash for like 4 months, and that was when I started because I was off work. I was thinking, I mean, I'm a researcher. I'm an academic. I was trying to find out what's going on.
Yeah.
This is now really serious. I've never experienced this before. And I guess I'd gone to moderate. I wouldn't say I was severe, having seen people who are really
Sure.
severe.
Yeah.
Um, but definitely struggling to do day-to-day things, going from, being very active person mentally and physically to I can barely hold a conversation. It hurts when people talk to me for too long and that kind of thing.
Were you
Um,
able to do at your worst, because you said you had another really bad crash last autumn, and
yeah,
were you able at your worst to, uh, you know, make meals and do washing and go for walks, or was it more like you were housebound and, bed
yeah,
crashes kind of thing?
yeah. It was sort of between housebound and bedbound for
Yeah.
those 4 months. So I didn't stay in a severe state, but I would have probably
Crash.
severely. Yeah.
When we talk about
Yeah.
baseline, there's so much language around it that I think is confusing. But when I talk about it, it's usually like, where are you outside the crash? Because at my worst, my baseline was severe and my crashes were very severe. Where, like, you can't chew, you can't speak, you can't roll over, you can't, like, but I didn't stay that way. Of course, we know that there are some people who actually live in a baseline that severe, which God love them. But yeah,
Yeah.
we're really talking about the baseline when we're not in a crash, and then in crashes we touch a lower baseline, of course, and hopefully rebound out of it. So
Yeah, so my baseline became kind of moderate and I guess dipping into a bit worse severe, whereas previously it had been mild.
yeah,
So really I would say overall I was housebound, fairly housebound. So so yeah, I was then when I had clearer sort of mental energy trying to research, how do I get what is this? No one else can help. So and there's a lot of stuff out there, and so you
yes,
kind of start to
there's so
filter. Yeah.
there is a lot of stuff.
So you start trying to filter through, what seems to make sense, what's congruous with how I'm feeling, who seems to make sense, um, are they congruous with stuff that I'm reading? But it's hard when you've got so very little energy,
Sure.
um, to kind of it's so complex and to try to pick it apart. The more I got into it, the more complex I realized it was, and
Yeah.
the more I was like, actually, I now just don't know where to start. I don't know whether to do heat therapy or cold therapy or take supplements or do HBOT or do like vagus nerve stimulators or this
Right.
kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of information out there. And did you experiment with different modalities before coming into the program? Could you tell us about some of those
Yeah.
things?
Yeah, so I had tried some supplements, things like nattokinase and
Mm.
uh, sero serapeptase and these kinds of things for long that were quite in the long COVID world.
Yeah. MECFS world too.
Um, okay.
Yeah.
I hadn't really come across a lot of stuff around mitochondria, and so that was really eye-opening, and that kind of whole energy battery life analogy, which completely makes sense, and has massively helped my understanding. I tried some HBOT stuff, so
Okay.
the oxygen therapy.
Yeah.
Um, I couldn't do it for too long because one of the impacts of MCAS on me has been sinus problems.
Mhm.
So I felt that I was risking giving myself another problem with the H spot.
Well,
Yeah.
what a lot of people don't understand about HBOT, because I poured $15,000 into HBOT, is
I
that
remember.
yeah, it's that it's very helpful in healing secondary, like dysfunctions and secondary effects of long COVID, MECFS. Um, but it also causes a lot of oxidative stress. And one of the issues is that in MECFS, we produce already a lot of oxidative stress. And so it can be a bit of a chicken and egg kind of situation, like where is it helping or hurting, you know? But anyway, go
Yeah.
ahead, continue.
Yeah. I and then I invested in one of those ear clip vagus nerve stimulators, which was quite expensive, and I was trying that for, and it had a money back guarantee. I think in British money it was about £500, um, and I was thinking, well, it might be helping, it might not. And meanwhile, I came across you, and I was like looking on your website, and you had some webinars, and just on social media, you were popping up, and every time I saw you, it was like she really understands this, and she gets it. You know, like the empathetic side as well as the scientific side as well as the range. You know, I really liked the way in your videos you kind of covered, well, you know, at the sort of hippier end, we've kind of got this, and at the sciencey end, we've got that.
Well, because I mean, both have a place in recovery. And like in my experience, I leaned very hard into the science of everything that I could find and understand in the research of MECFS, but also it was sort of also for me a emotional and mental and spiritual journey through, because we are emotional, physical, mental, spiritual beings. So if we go through a physical illness, we can't help but also go through a mental, emotional, spiritual journey. If you're bent that way, if you believe in those things, it's you can't
Yeah.
separate them. So that's why I talk
Yeah.
about them both, because they both played a role in how I got better, of course.
And I really liked that, you know, because again, I just think that's very authentic that excuse me, that there is this kind of range of approach and this kind of holistic approach, as well as, you know, I'm a scientist, I appreciate the science, but as you say, it's also emotional, spiritual, and, you know, identity as well, you know, that sort of comes into it too. Um, so so I looked on your website and saw some of that, and I was kind of thinking with this machine, like going, well, it's about the same price as this machine.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a good way to I mean, we only have so much money, and, like you said, you're if you're looking at something that's promising one result and something that's also offering maybe, like, a whole roadmap, I could see where
That's
maybe one thing's a better bang for your buck.
exactly that was my logic was, you know, but this roadmap, it's like that's what I need. Maybe later I might want another vagus nerve stimulator, um, or something else, depending on this roadmap. But it was the roadmap and the the format in which you had brought all of this complex stuff from the science um, to the different kind of key principles and concepts and ideas and the different systems at play and how one impacts another. You know, whether you're talking about sleep or whether you're talking about supplements or whether you're talking about the autonomic nervous system, you know, it's all there. Um, and so I thought, well, I'll get my money back on the machine. And
Oh, wow. Did you get your money back on the machine? This is crazy, and then you invested into the program. Boy, I'm sure glad that you loved it.
I'm, I'm definitely glad that I did because, you know,
Yeah.
the machine may have helped a little, may not, but the program has absolutely massively, massively helped my my understanding of what's going on. It just brought the bits and pieces that I'd been researching. They all were relevant, but it mapped them, as you say, you know, it put
Yeah, it
them
was a
in.
roadmap. A
Yeah,
lot
it
of people
really is.
say that it the two main pieces of feedback that I get, besides the fact that, it's helping them to get better, is that it's a roadmap that takes all of this noise in the MECFS world and makes sense of it all in a comprehensive way. Like it's like somebody has in the MECFS world, they're diagnosed and they're looking at 1,000 scattered puzzle pieces, and like they're all put together now in a way that makes sense. That's the one piece of feedback I get. And then the other is that it lets them plug the holes in their own research and their own, because as you know, it's an experimental roadmap. So it's not intended as a cure or a singular solution. So people who are coming in with more experience with brain retraining and less experience with pacing, they can plug that hole. People who have a lot of experience with pacing, never heard of neuroplasticity or nervous system work, they plug that hole, and so
Mhm.
on and so forth. With, you said, pieces we talk about identity or maybe MCAS or POTS or things that they keep trying to recover. They keep hitting this sort of roadblock. So those are the two
Mhm.
pieces of feedback that I get. But it sounds like you're confirming that
That's
as well.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think, that I think what's nice about your approach is, that puzzle is a fluid kind of puzzle. It's, it's not you're not trying to say this is a one size fits all scenario. It's like here are the key, well, they're not just key, but here is the principles of what's
Pillars.
going on. Here, yeah, of
Yeah, the
course, the
pillars.
pillars.
The four pillars. I knew you were going to come to the word. The four pillars. Yeah. They're very bio individual. Everyone uses them differently and at different times. And I still use them differently and at different times in my own recovery. That's not, and doesn't that obviously to me, when I was recovering, made way more sense when I was listening to recovery stories. I couldn't make any sense out of people referencing all these different things and getting better. It made me feel like either everyone had a different illness and MECFS didn't even exist, or that maybe people weren't being truthful. It left me very confused. But when I went deeper, I discovered that it's more of these four pillars that people are, because we're different individuals with different onset of disease and different histories, are getting benefit from different pillars at different times. And that's how I managed to get well, by leaning into those principles, and then form the program based on that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So how about, could you tell us a little bit about you? So you joined the program, the last
Mhm.
cohort. So we're only looking at the last cohort started it's April for those watching this in case it's in the future. And you joined the cohort in February, the last cohort, right? February, January, February.
Yep.
And you joined through the entry point of study and support, which means you started the program with the community, basically. So the lifetime members, newbies, and self-study upgrades all coming together for 8 weeks, and that's how you joined the program. So can you tell us a little bit about what that experience was like for you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the time I was really like cognitively struggling and
Yeah.
just really sensitive to everything. So um the um the videos I think, are fantastic because you can watch a bit, so you can step away, you can watch another one. I also really noticed how like you can see how you've been through this before because you're very gentle in the way that you approach it. So, it's easy to watch.
That's
And,
that's good feedback. And
and,
Prana's in the videos, and she's a love, my cat.
oh yeah, of course, yeah.
Prana the Buddha princess. So
Beautiful.
anyway, go ahead.
Um, and so I guess my experience was I really looked forward each week to having these videos and being able to build on what had happened the week before. There was a sort of homework, which some of it I engaged with, some of it I didn't. And I guess that's the kind of the point, depends on how much energy you've got and all of that. I think every bit of it was really important for me. I think the only aspect that didn't feel so relevant was the sleep stuff because I actually seem to sleep quite well. But otherwise, every single aspect, just the starting around the autonomic nervous system was ideal, and that journey with becoming more and more sensitive to my body and the the systems at play, the tools that you give to kind of stop and recalibrate, to have like a much greater awareness of what's going on and how to cope with it. When I joined, I was scared. I was in a place of, oh my God, is this my life? And I think one of the things that happened for me was that fear started to fade. Like, oh, okay, this is like a handrail, and I can, you know, you talking about obviously you talked about pacing and so on, but that expansion and contraction side of it as well. That when things get tough and you start to dip again, that actually that's a rich time for trying to heal. And that idea really helped me as well, that those down points that used to really scare me and I'd feel like this is it, that I'm never coming out of this one, suddenly didn't feel so terrifying, and I had tools, so I felt kind of empowered to, okay, but I can meditate, there's things that I can do. um, so yeah, I guess it just kind of built through those 2 months, and, before the end of the program, I was feeling a lot better and starting to think maybe I can go back to work a little bit, maybe I can do a bit of work from home, and I want to try because I want to try this expansion and contraction a bit by bit. So I kind of came back cognitively first, but not physically, because again, you talk about don't do all of this,
No,
try
no,
to
and
do something.
reinvest the dividends back into recovery instead of spending them in spending what's in your bank account as soon as you start to feel a little bit better, which is also tied to pillar 4 because, the tendency is when you feel a little bit better to, uh and this is not just people with MECFS, but
It
humans in
was my
general.
tendency.
I mean, humans in general, if you start to feel a little bit better in the gym, like you would think people would just keep continuing in the gym, but they don't
Mm,
usually. Like the habit slips, even when you're starting to feel better, which is so strange, but that's human nature. So with MECFS, when we start to make some progress, a lot of times what kicks in is like, oh, I'm recovering, I'm getting better. So like I can do this and I can do this and I can do this. Or it just sneaks up on you where you start to do a little bit more and then a little bit more and a little bit more. Uh,
yeah.
and so it's an ongoing process, I think, of learning to take on pacing as a way of being, like to
Yeah.
adopt it as a huge identity shift that this is who I am. I'm a person who embraces the concept of pacing, not because I still embrace the concept of pacing as a person who's well, not because it's a handicap, but because it was who I was designed to be, and then this insane world we live in tried to turn me into a robot, you know? So anyway, go ahead.
Yes.
At the end, like pacing's what we're designed to do. As organisms, we're supposed to pace activity and rest. All the other organisms do on the planet,
Yeah.
except us.
And I think once you've got the impacts of just plowing on regardless, you don't ever kind of really want to go back to that. You just know it's unhealthy, and like you say, for anyone really, it's not good. And once become more sensitive to your body, it and now I find it hard to ignore. Whereas before, I would just plow on and plowed on for years. Now I almost can't ignore it because I'm more sensitive to it. It's like,
Which is
okay,
good.
yeah,
Yeah, because we say awareness in the Edison Effect, we say awareness is the foundation of recovery because you want to be able to hear the most gentle whisper from your body. Like you want to be that in tune that you can hear like whispers instead of what most of us end up with, especially when we're severe, is we're not really hearing whispers. We're in a state of great alarm and threat, and we feel the symptoms really intensely, which is not the same as actually hearing whispers from your body. What you hear are alarms. So we try to learn in the Edison Effect to get past the alarms and actually get in tune and hear those whispers so that pacing becomes intuitive and for the rest of your life, you actually know, when things are too much and not too much is one of the
mm,
things, that we do. And that's
yeah,
part of the expansion contraction cycle. But I loved what you said about the fear kind of going down and feeling empowered because I know for myself, when I was ill, that the most terrifying thing about it was having no idea what was happening to me or why. And just feeling so powerless, and like I felt like I was just being constantly burned by this fire, and I never knew where the fire was going to be, and so it created for me anyway quite a great deal of hypervigilance around doing anything, especially when I became severe. But a lot of folks who are in the program will say that, in week one, where we talk so much about limbic kindling, and you describe limbic kindling perfectly in the beginning of this interview, where you shared these occurrences where you started to get more symptoms and new things popping up, and that's limbic kindling literally in action. But also, um, when people start to make sense of why this happened, the quicksand illness, and that the map out of it is the reverse of how you got into it, I think it takes away a lot of the sting of this powerlessness and this fear. At least it did for me, and others report that way. And then because you're not as afraid and you're not as activated, you're able to go through the contractions without, so much resistance and so much despair, and that of course also helps us to heal and to reverse the hyperactivity of the limbic system and all of those things we talk about in the program. So um, would you want to share with us, so you finished the program, we finished that cohort in very very recently, it was
Yeah.
in the end of
Mhm.
March.
Yeah.
And are you in Lifetime or no? And it's totally fine.
No, I keep meaning to do it, and I
Oh, okay.
absolutely because like I want to be able to go back and visit that material because already I've never had a great memory. And but also it's like watching a movie. When you watch it again, you see different things, and different things come out at you depending on where you're at in your journey.
Yeah.
um so I haven't
No,
joined out.
that's okay. I just wondered if you were, and also I was going to say about the homework exercises that people who do upgrade and join lifetime access to the program, many of them go through the program 3 4 times, and they often say to me that there's nuggets, like there's new information that comes through, because as you recover and your brain fog lifts, many people are really cognitively impaired, they're able to digest more information, and they can actually do the exercises in a deeper way. Some people, the first time they go through, don't do any of the homework exercises. They just listen. Some people do some of them. Some people go back and do more of them. Some people go back and do them all over again, and there's different answers and different information. So that's great to hear that you'll be with us, and also you'll be able to access the coaching calls if you need them for the future cohorts as well, and get access from the Lifetime community chat room as well, and that really cool group of people. So, but
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
it's having that handrail still as well,
Having the
because
handrail for as
yeah,
long as you
because
need it.
yeah, exactly. And it is, it is a lifetime thing, as you point out. It's obviously, I mean, I've felt better very quickly. It's kind of snowballed, and um I mean, I'm not where I was
Right.
before any of
Right.
this, but I went and swam for half an hour today, which is
Pretty
just
big deal.
I couldn't even have got in the car and driven to the pool, let alone the thought of getting changed and all of that, and getting changed again on the way out, and all, that would have just been like a no,
Way too
just
much.
no, I can't face that. Yeah.
Yeah, can
Um,
you tell us where, because I mean we're doing this progress interview, and I mean it's pretty soon after the program, so
It is.
it will be really cool to do one with you again, like if you want to, like 6 months from now or a year from now, that would be really awesome. But can you share with those watching, like, what's changed
it was strange, really, because I was starting to just feel a bit better, like all
all the way
around,
around? Yeah.
by the middle of March, so before the program finished. Um, and so I wanted to kind of think about going back to work. I was a bit like, this is probably too soon, but that's just my nature.
I think it might be too soon. But I'm not telling you what to do, but if you were in Lifetime, I would be like, I don't know
Yeah.
if you would do that just yet, but that's up to you, of course.
But I am able to work from home. It's 2 days a week, and it's very kind of light. So I was thinking, I think you said at some point in the program, if you're pushing yourself cognitively, maybe don't push yourself so much physically. If you're pushing yourself physically, maybe not so much cognitive, just try not to
I hope
do
I
all
didn't
three.
say pushing at all in the program.
Yeah, you didn't
That's not
say
a word I use.
you're
I think
expanding
I
a
was
little.
saying, like, if you are, if you are doing too much, like, in that area and you want to expand, that you might need to pull back in order to level things out, in order to grow your baseline physically. If you're really putting a lot of energy cognitively and you want to grow physically, something like that. But anyway,
Um, so I started doing that. I found that I quite quickly was able to deal with the kind of a little bit of the cognitive demands of university life, and as long as I didn't have to travel to campus and I didn't have to just sort of be around people, um, and then physically, I started to just do things like walk 5 minutes to the shop instead of drive, and um, yeah, like walk really small distances, but trying to do it more regularly and really notice whether I was feeling like Pam was going to kick in, feeling whether I had overextended myself. And I was finding that no, I wasn't getting those signals from my body, or maybe a little bit. And I have had some, you know, um, days where I'm like
you have
back
some
on the
wobbles.
couch.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when I've had them, it hasn't had the same fear. It's like, oh, okay, um, this is what you spoke about. This is what, we're kind of warned about. If you're expanding, then there's probably going to be some contraction and so on. So I guess I've just been feeling my way through that. And then about 3 weeks ago, it was one of those, like, I woke up and my mind was really clear, and I kind of was like, I feel sort of normal, like my body doesn't hurt, my brain is here. And yeah, it was like, oh my God, oh my God, this is really exciting, but don't be too excited.
Be excited, but just use that as signs you're doing lots of the right things and reinvest that back into recovery is what we would say. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, reinvest it.
So I guess the big thing now is PEM and, how much rebound into PEM am I gonna get? So I've pushed myself a bit today, both in terms of I've been out and I've been swimming. I've also been online in one form or another doing a lot of talking today. Um, so I'm wondering, am I in a few days' time or tomorrow gonna have this? But I've been in this situation now over the last 3 weeks quite a few times, and I have only had tiny little feelings of nothing
Yeah.
serious. So it
Yeah, and
feels
as you know, like, it's like, more about the intensity of the PEM that helps us to understand, how to adjust expansions, and everything's done very gently, but it sounds like you're really in tune with your body and the messages from your body and moving with it, and like we said, once you learn how to listen to the whispers, the body doesn't have to scream anymore, because that's the reason why it started screaming in the first place, is because we're so raised culturally, in your culture and mine, to um, ignore the body. So, um,
it Yeah, it's really interesting that you say that because I could really see myself as someone that has never really been very in tune with my body. I just pushed it to do the things that my brain wants it to do.
me too. Yeah, me too. 100% all my life. And if I didn't feel well, I pushed anyway. And sometimes my body was screaming at me from the top of its lungs, like, please stop. But I would still make it do things. And then finally it was like, nope, I'm in the driver's seat now. Like, you cannot now. You cannot push me now. So I have to rebuild all of that trust through, like we said, through all this nervous system regulation, through supporting your immune system, through very, 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 very gently rehabilitating the body and brain, um, through changing the way we approach our life, through our identity, through where we source our value as achievers versus, all of those things. They're all interconnected to the way that we live our lives. And I absolutely cannot thank you enough for coming on here and sharing a bit of your story. And your story's still new, you're new into the process, And recovery, as we say in the Edison Effect, is for life. I'm entering my third year, third year, no, fourth year. Well, whatever. I'm a couple of years now that I'm symptom free and well. But I very much think of it as a lifelong journey because as we talk about it, the pillars, our relationship to the pillars keep deepening as we keep deepening our recovery. You can always have a more regulated nervous system. You can always have a more balanced immune system, and you can always keep rebuilding your body, and you can always keep working on your pillar four work, the way you relate to the world. And all these things keep coming up as your life gets bigger and as you get, it comes flooding back in and new stressors and pressures are on you. But I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing. And I think the last thing I want to ask you is if you could offer, a word to those who are watching who are uh, maybe contemplating taking this journey with me and the Edison effect, and I'm sure they have all the same fears and worries and concerns that maybe you had when you were comparing this medical device with the program. Um, what would you want them to know? Like, what would be important you feel like for them to hear and to know?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I would want to encourage people to do it. I understand that there's a lot of noise out there, and going back to the device versus the program, it's classed as it's band-aids rather than actually understanding what's happening in your body. And you can always use the band-aids and the bandages and the technologies later on, but the fundamentals um, are what you're going to learn. And fundamentals is not to mean basic, because the course is quite complex. There's a lot of depth to it as well as breadth. Um, and I think that is an investment in yourself. And I'm not paid to be here. I'm not whatever. It's a
We don't
genuine.
do that. I don't do that. We don't do that. I don't do that. No, no. You are, I
And
mean, you were beautiful. You offered to help and to come and speak and share, and that's the spirit of the whole community that you're
yeah,
building.
I think for me, a lot of the fear has gone because even if I relapse, I know that I can go back to the material. I know that there's always more to learn as well, but I know that I can rebuild. I know what to do if, and even if there's new symptoms that I haven't come across before, there's such a breadth that's covered um, through your own experience. I mean, I think that's something that
Yeah, because
comes
I
across
was really sick.
is that you were really sick and
Really
you
sick.
you had everything,
I
you know,
really
then
did. The only thing I didn't have really was the gut dysbiosis where, like, there's people that can't tolerate food. I didn't have that. But I was pretty wickedly impaired cognitively and physically. Some people have one or the other, and like you said, I mean, there was a whole host of over a dozen symptoms. So
yeah,
yeah, it helps me to be able to help others because it's not that people who are mild with MECFS can help people, of course. But I do think it helps when you
yeah.
meet somebody who was that bad.
Yeah, it's nice to have someone that's very relatable, even though I wasn't severe. Obviously, there were people on the program who were, and
Yeah.
in the community sessions when people have got questions, and they
Ways.
go from mild to severe questions, and your experience covers um, a vast array of it, and where you don't have experience, you'll say I don't have
Right.
experience, which is also nice.
That's true, right. I'm not gonna speak on anything I don't know about, and, I learned, like I said, I learned from all of you as well. In the years I've been a coach now, I've learned so much from working with people because we all are helping to create the crystal clear puzzle together. So it's
Mm,
it's people who are still in the program who are, um, I'm thinking of one person in particular who was working on Pillar 4 for a long time before she was able to expand. In another program would be silenced and not allowed to speak because it would look like it doesn't work or something. But because it's not a cure and it's not offered that way, her voice is welcome at the table because we can all learn from why she had to work on Pillar 4 for so long. why she had to work on boundaries and finding her voice before she could expand. And so everyone is able to share and speak, and it's not like that in the community. So um,
Yeah, there's a
yeah.
lot to get from other people's journeys as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. Well,
Mhm.
I'm so glad that you came on here and that you shared. I'm so glad that you're gonna be in Lifetime and that I'm gonna see your face and
Yes, I look
get to
forward to seeing
follow
her there
along.
again.
Yeah, I get to follow along, on your journey. And the last thing I was gonna say was, when you do end up in Lifetime, one of the I think final reframes in recovery that's the hardest to make is to think of even MECFS as quote returning, which I mean, we could have a whole hour-long talk, you and I, about what that would mean. But this word relapse, isn't a word that I use, and people sometimes get upset with me for not using that word. But because we talk so much about failing forward, and because we talk so much about in the program about everything as always being information about how to fine-tune recovery, even if you were to suddenly have like a large crash or something, in my view of thinking about recovery, that would just be information about how actually to get better. It's like that's how the Edison effect was created, this concept of, trying to build a light bulb a million times and it all being information. So, in time, I hope that you'll think of, even if symptoms are returning, not as a relapse, but as a way to look at your evidence journal and see how we can fine tune, your approach and relationship with the pillars. But I'm very proud of you and very excited for how far you've come in such a short time. I mean, it takes time to recover, and you've made a lot of progress really quickly. So, I'm so appreciate you coming on here and sharing your story and getting to meet and talk with you. I can't
Yeah,
thank
no,
you
thank
enough.
you, and just yeah, thanks for the work that you're doing. It's brilliant.
Thanks. Okay. Big heart.
Thank you.
See you soon. Thank you. Okay. Bye.